welcome to Arabian Horses Today. This is our inaugural show, and I'm pleased to have at our inaugural show my esteemed friend and Judges and Stewards Commissioner, Stan Morey. Stan, as you know, has been involved with Arabian Horse for a period of time, and Stan, welcome to Arabian Horses Today.
Thanks, Walter. I appreciate it very much being here.
Before we begin, why don't we tell the people exactly, you have been involved as I have. I've been involved with Arabian horses for 50 years. How long have you been involved in the Arabian horse breed?
Yeah, at least, I don't think 50, Walter, but I've been at least 40, 45 maybe. We both grew up seeing the same horses. I started out obviously training horses many years ago. Stayed a trainer until approximately 6 years ago, or 2009, and then I became a Judges and Stewards Commissioner. Before that, I was obviously I judged all over the world and successful in the training barn. We bred a lot of horses, so I have a whole history, just as you do, of being around a lot of great horses, seeing a lot of great horses. It's funny now thinking back upon it. We just had all of the unique things that go along with a breed, but a lady took some frozen semen of ours the other day and got a horse in foal to one of our stallions, D.W. Bonfire, who passed away maybe 15 years ago. And I still had some frozen semen, and we tried it. I told them to try it and see, and they got it in foal to a really outstanding horse. And that'll be interesting to see. So yeah, there's a huge history that goes along with that. Me and you both.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Stan, as the Judges and Stewards Commissioner, you've been in it since 2009, so for 6 years.
Yes.
What are your duties and responsibilities as the Judges and Stewards Commissioner?
Well, number one is the education of judges, as far as setting up the schools, certification of national regional judges. Then we start our schools as far as looking for potential judges, but mainly they're exhibitor schools, but they're set up for people that possibly want to go ahead and be a judge. So we set all those up. We're responsible for the testing, the evaluations, suspensions, fines, those kind of things that come through there. But and that goes along with the judges and the stewards both. USCF is a licensing body for the R and small R and large R judges, and we have a certification that's called National Regional, which enables people to judge national and regional shows. So a lot of things go along with that. The other side of that is that I go to a lot of different shows all year long, but in particular I make all the national shows. We are parcel to selecting judges, selecting the criteria through the rules committee, and then quite honestly, enforcement of those things. So if somebody's having a problem or there's questions, and then that's where I come in. My office comes in.
Okay, today's topic is a very controversial one, and thank you for addressing it forthright. And today's topic is, does today's show ring have a level playing field? That's what the topic is for today.
Yeah.
It's a difficult subject to address, but we're going to go ahead and do that. So, in your opinion, does the show ring today have a level playing field?
Well, yeah, Walter, it's a very tough question to answer, and it's hard to answer it in just one terms, but I'll try to address that as much as we can. One, is there a level playing field? And I guess if you want to ask that, is it with the judges? And that has to do with me. In other words, are judges looking at things in a fair way and giving everybody a fair shake, if you will, when they come in the ring, from the moment that gate's open until they pull the horses into the lineup? By and large, and I've tended now hundreds of shows as commissioner, nationals, those kind of things, and seen hundreds of classes. I guess it goes down to education. And to answer it more succinctly with this, if I don't feel like that the judges are educated, then then the exhibitor's not getting a fair shake. Now, then, if you want to go the other way, and that's a whole different question, dynamic, if you will, all of those things. Can a small person win in the Arabian show ring? Or do they have to have the trainers? Do they have to have this? Do they have to have that to do that? I can tell you this much, that it takes a special person with a special horse because of all of the things that are involved. You did, I did, we all grew up showing horses, and they sometimes competed in 3 or 4 different divisions and did very well with it. We are so specialized now, almost to our detriment. That may sound a little bit, but it's detrimental to us because of the smallness of our breed to that. And so, same thing goes with judges. Judges are looking for, they're responsible for rewarding excellence. They're not responsible for, theories and what all that could have been and he said, she said. So my estimation is that I'm going to say 90% of the time the level playing field is just that. But people want to go back and throw everything on the judge that they didn't see, that they didn't do. I can tell you this much, that there are judges that come to me all the time. I see it all the time, that they have 6 horses in a class. They didn't like any of them. Okay? But a lot of people don't think about it like that. They didn't like any of them. None of them they felt like met the criteria, but you're responsible for picking something. You have to put somebody up. So the level playing field, we are trying to address those things through the selection process, and I mean that in the long term is I'm a big advocate of trying to group people into their expertise. And if you want to call it a leveling, the quarter horse people tried it, and they've done pretty well with it. I think we have the opportunity here to do a lot of those things and to really to group people into their expertise. In other words, first level, second level. I don't like to see national champions 6 or 7 times over competing against people that this is their first time to be at the nationals or the regionals. And yes, that doesn't make for a level playing field, and it's hard because of the numbers that we have.
So, Stan, how many judges are there today that are qualified big R and small R judges for the Arabian horse?
There's about 247, Walter, and that number fluctuates year to year, but it's about 247.
So we have a pool of 247 judges that we're dealing with that really determine whether it's really not you, it's really the judges that determine whether the people feel that it's a level playing field or not. Okay.
That's good.
And so those 247 people are responsible for their perception of our industry, whether it's honest or not honest or whatever. So that's a huge responsibility for each judge when they become a judge and judge a show.
Right.
So knowing that, how would you answer? This is a question that a lot of people address me and stuff. They say to me, especially now we're talking about halter, that unless you have a big-time trainer showing your halter horse, you have no chance in the show ring. How would you address that? How would you answer that question to someone that says that and creates that statement?
Well, to answer my first answer to that is that's false. The second answer to it is that because most of the time, big-time trainers, if you will, that quotation, big-time trainers usually are leading the best horses. Okay, I just saw a lady in New York that was leading a horse, and she was, I think, third in this class, and there wasn't that many horses there. But that horse could have gone, and those judges, she didn't win. I think she was third, and that's where she should have been. Okay. But I see that all the time, and not here we go again with the scorecard. I think the scorecard has added to that. Now, then, a lot of people that are detractors from the scorecard, good, bad, or different. We can talk about that till the cows come home, if you will. But I think that in itself has helped people with as far as being able to show horses, and especially in the divisions that you're talking about. You know, Walter, to answer, you have to have a great horse to do those things. We have so many different divisions now. In the amateur division for amateur to handle, and then the open division, the futurities, all of those kind of things. So again, they tend to get into their slots. I think the real question is, would an amateur be able to compete with a halter horse in the open division? Okay, and my answer to you is yes, but they need to be leading a great horse just like those other guys are. That's what usually happens is, I can't compete with my horse. Well, your horse got beat. Okay, he just got beat. He got beat by better horses, and that's what happens a lot of times with this. And a lot of people don't hear that.
But Stan, you and I have both seen the following happen. Using that premise that you just said, and we're referring now strictly to the halter division.
Yeah.
A halter horse is a breeding division, and so you're judging the horse on type and conformation. And during the time that that horse is showing at a show, which is a relatively few days, a lot of those horses will be shown in amateur and in open. Now, when they're shown, and in that short period of time, they'll receive a totally different scoring with the amateur as they do with the open, and the same horses that win with the open might not win with the amateur. It might be all changed around. So what happens is, when you see that, and we're assuming these are credible judges and stuff, there, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, there shouldn't be that. I mean, you're using a scorecard, you're using a standard. The standard is the same whether an amateur shows or an open shows it, or if an amateur shows it in an open class. To my way of thinking, that if this, and I would be that particular animal should receive the same score, or virtually the same score, not this humongous spread of scores as you see of points, from one class to another, from amateur to open, where the amateur horse, will have a whole different, with the same horses that were in the open and amateur, be totally scored differently and placed differently. So how do we answer to the people on that when that happens?
Well, and that's a great question, and then I answer that or have to address that a lot. And I'm not going to sit here and deny that hasn't taken place. I've seen it. I've watched it with horses and amateurs competing in an open class. And again, those scores shouldn't change. Their head scores shouldn't change. Possibly their body score shouldn't change. But I have seen it time and time again. And let's just talk about that a little bit. The presentation. Okay. Everybody wants to talk about, well, the presentation shouldn't really matter. A good horse is a good horse is a good horse. Well, that's the same thing as telling me that, and I'll use this, that Jimmy Stokowski is going to be able to. And one of his people that ride, his amateurs, are going to be able to present their horse the same as Jimmy Stokowski can in the English pleasure class, or Joe Reeser in a Western class, or those kind of things. The problem with it is that people tend to want to they lock in on a particular thing and say, look, my horse got terrible scores, and then my open person went in there and showed that horse. And so how does that change the horse? The horse didn't change. He's standing there in the same thing. I've seen neck scores change. I have seen the type scores, and I'll just go there. The type scores don't seem to change that much, but two things usually do, and drastically. Neck and shoulder scores seem to change a little bit, either from the presentation or whatever. Leg scores change because of the way the horse was presented to them. Maybe it wouldn't stood up in its best light. Maybe it wouldn't. That's their job as a professional. And then, more importantly, movement scores. So when you start looking at three categories that change, because of the amateur or because of the way it was presented. Uh, those are huge points for me. And I've seen horses that were national champion with one person and not with the other. But I've also seen it the other way. National champion amateur class, they go back in the open in their top 10 or their whatever, and some of the horses that they had beat in those classes came back and won in the open classes. And if you go and compare those things, and if you do it like we do a spreadsheet and take a look at this thing with judges across the board. Okay, what's the big change here? And it's always legs and feet and movement and neck and shoulder. The other top of the horse, a lot of those scores don't change that much. They're usually pretty close, or within 2 or 3 points of each other.
But the only part that, and I can see where people would disagree with maybe what you're saying is that these are professional judges. The legs don't change from one day to another. If they see the horse differently on the legs, as a professional judge, ask them to re-walk the horse or ask them to reset up the horse. The horse is exactly what it is. The legs aren't going to be great one day and bad the next day. And the same thing like with neck. I agree that a pro might get him to stretch it out farther or set it up higher or stuff. But as a professional judge, your job is to know what that horse really looks like. That's why you're the professional judge. And as a professional judge, in my opinion, if I was the judge and one day I gave a neck score of 19 and the next day a score of 17, a 2-point spread in halter is a huge amount.
It is a huge spread.
And all of a sudden, when you see something like that, to me, that's a discerning thing of how that judge is judging the horse, and you can see where the people would say the perception is not fair.
Well, and I'm not going to disagree with you about that, Walter, but I also think that they're human, and what they see and what they react to is what's presented to them. When you look at a number, and we're talking about nationals, but on a smaller show level, that happens one class to the next. I've seen it happen where people called me, and I get calls all the time. Stan, I just showed my horse in the amateur with a score of this. He went back 2 classes later with the pro, and he got this. How does that happen? So when I call the person, when I call the judge, and I do call them, and I've called them at shows like that, and said, look, what happened here? Or such and such, such and such. Okay? Most of the time, 90% of the time, Stan, they came in and unfortunately stood the horse up in front of me. I asked him to reset, didn't get it. Horse wouldn't stand still. Horse wouldn't do this, and so their leg scores go down. What people want to do is go discount that there's a lot of mistakes being made by somebody else and just throw that on the judge. The judge should give me exactly the same score all the time. That doesn't happen in dressage. That doesn't happen anywhere in this business. That those scores are always the same. It doesn't happen in Europe with those scores.
But and I'm not to disagree with you, or I shouldn't say disagree with you, but my understanding, I understand with a horse that's in performance. It's a performance class. It's a training. This is a halter class, and they're judging breeding animals. And,
yes.
and the basis for doing that is we're trying to breed a better horse. It's not how well this horse is shown. It's not how well this horse is presented. And in order to accomplish what we're trying to do in the halter, in particular, yes, there can be a small variance because everybody can't do everything the same time after time after time. Understand that. But I've seen too many variances where it's very large, from them showing at one show with the same professional and then going to another show with the same professional using the same judge's scoring card, and the scorecard is entirely different. That horse doesn't change. His head doesn't change. His legs don't change. His neck is not going to get longer or shorter. It's going to be what it is. And so from my standpoint, and as a halter person and a breeder of halter horses, it's discerning to me and stuff, and I don't know how to answer that question to a newbie in the breed, why that would happen, and stuff. These are professional trainers, professional judges, and really, if in a breeding class where it's strictly we're judging the horse, it's type and conformation. Legs, like you're saying, there's a big spread in legs. Well, if there's a big spread in legs from that judge from class to class, then to me, that judge is having a problem of judging accurately. And then how do you address that? How you, as a commissioner, how would you address that issue?
Yeah. And again, that's the very things that we have to, and I have to take a look at. If there is a, I get part of the thing that's discerning to me now. When it first started out, I understood it a little bit, but and I'll equate some of this to reining. Reining, you'll hear guys say, he's a great reining judge. He's a little hard, but because he doesn't, he's always consistent, but he's pretty low, usually on the low side. That shouldn't be that way, okay? And I think what you're saying to me is, and I totally agree with you with this, how to get there is we're trying to take two different paths. But if a horse is 18, with three different judges and another judge picks it because and says he's 15, I need to talk to them, okay? I need to see them. I need to understand them as far as terminology is concerned. I did a deal with a group of judges with our EEC, and that's the biggest thing that we have right now is that, these scores are all too high. Well, I don't think they're high. I disagree. But I also think that you need to understand how to split a half a point. And a half a point, just because you're and to be able to say that, okay? Because that's where we are right now with the scoring system, is that we want to try at our national levels where, it's been told to them that you need to start at 17. Okay, and everybody goes, well, Stan, well, think about that statement. The horses that come to our national shows, and most of the time in our regional shows, are probably 17 horses, the majority of them. Okay, when you look at them as far as quality, movement, those kind of things. Okay, but you need to understand how to split a half a point there. And that means, again, splitting hairs and being educated enough to do that. It goes back to the same thing again. That's the part of this whole situation that I think everybody is discounting a little bit. We are starting more and more and more with judges to judge them and have a really good picture in our head about where we are with these horses when they walk. And a lot of people don't understand that, but the walk is extremely important to most of these people now.
All right. So I guess what I'm still puzzled about, and what you and I are both trying to, I know you want the same as I do. We want to create an environment for people so that when they go into the show ring, that playing field is level. Well, the only people, in my opinion, that can make it level or not level are the judges. Nope. So it's based on not only how, we always hear political. Well, that's the same as saying they're dishonest. It's also how educated they are. In my opinion, if you see from what you've said and stuff, if the leg scores vary that drastically and the neck varies that drastically, those are areas that are strictly confirmation, will not change on a horse from day to day. Then that's telling me that judge is not that well educated in those areas, and something should be accomplished to do something about that. So when you do see something like that, and that, do you have any authority to go to that judge and tell him to come back to school, or to not have him judge in the future until something happens? Or how do you address an issue like that?
Well, usually what I'll do is talk to the judge and just ask him, and then I'll ask him to come back to the school. And then when we go through interviews, and again, sometimes they may be up for an interview that very year, and we will sit down with them and go through some scores that they gave through the year, because I try to keep all of those kind of things. But yeah, but that happens with Western Pleasure, that happens with English, that happens with Hunter. It's not just halter, but halter seems, because of the scoring system, and something that you have to write down. Um, that's a good thing. Good thing about that is that here's the scores. This is what I did. This is not what I thought I did. This is what I did.
So has there been an instance where judges that you've been with over the 6 years, where you've had to stop them from judging for a period of time, or having come into a judge's school, does that automatically, while having the extra education, does that fix the problem, or how do you?
Well, the way I handle that is ask him to come out. We had a couple of judges in particular that I had come back to the school, go back through, and specifically go back through the halter because of their use of the scorecard. So,
okay, and then what happens after after they go through the judges school? Is there a follow-up after that?
Well, they go through that, and then what I usually do is I have them on a probationary period, and we will track them a little bit. If you got to understand something too, sometimes those people don't work, and it's not fair for them to see 1 or 2 or 3 halter horses to ascertain whether they get it or not. So sometimes they don't work enough, and you're looking at it that way.
Okay, let's go with it. Let's talk about U.S. Nationals. It's coming up now and stuff.
Okay.
Before the Nationals begin, I'm assuming you have a meeting with the judges, and
yes.
If in fact you do you give them any instructions, and if so, what?
Well, this year alone, we're going to sit down with, and we'll go with halter, but all of the groups. We've done it for the last 3 years with the Working Western Committee and the trail people. They watch videos. We put them on videos as a group, so they get their eye a little bit more accumulated to what they want to see, and come up with the scores they're looking at. And so they're all talking about what they look at. The same thing's going to happen this year with the English Pleasure group, the Hunter Pleasure panel, and the halter panel. Put them in front of some videos, put some horses in front of them, get their eyes. And this worked pretty well at youth. We didn't get a chance to do it that much at Canada because we just didn't have the wherewithal to do it. But this year at US, I'm going to have some screens for them to take a look at, and all of them sit down and kind of go through what they're looking at. Every year we always get somebody that wants to make a statement or something about a penalty situation, or this, that, or we're not going to tolerate this, and too much makeup, too much oil, too much grease, all of those kind of things, and we try to talk through that. And we have that every year. I'm very in your face, if you will, on those kind of things. I don't want to be overbearing with any group or anything like that, but I want to understand that they have an understanding of what they're going to try to do.
Okay, and then let's address it a little bit further. During the show, obviously you're there during the entire show, correct?
Yes.
And while you're there at the show, what specifically are the duties? What do you do? What is it that you're looking to accomplish while the show is going on as the Judges Stewards Commissioner?
Well, I'm tracking a couple of things, Walter. One, you're watching what judges are doing, and then you track their cards. If I have a judge that I think is, maybe off, and I watch judges all the time. I go to 3 rings. I've got 3 rings running there: the halter, the trail, Western, and in the main ring with the Hunter and English and those classes. But I will go through all of that and look at them, and then go look at cards, see if somebody's off in left field, there's an issue. Same thing with the halter. Go down there, take a look at and watching people the way they track. Part of this situation, it goes back to what you said a while ago. The consistency means that we're on board with everything. But if I see something that quite frankly is unanimous, that they're unanimous too many times, then I start to worry a little bit, because I know at that level, at the horse show, they're seeing different things. Now, then they may all see the same type of situation, but mistakes happen in those rings from station to station. The halter, though, specifically to lock in on the halter, That's right there in front of you. Okay, they're usually walking out there around those kind of things. But I want to see if somebody's saying, okay, no, I didn't like this, and if there is a big point spread. Usually, we go back to it again. Usually in movement, usually in legs. That's when we start talking. And I will go and talk to them. Say, Andy, we go look at some video. I've done that before. So yeah, it's a busy time.
So during the show, if I'm correct, before you'll have meetings with them. During the show, if need be, you'll have meetings with them.
Yes.
And then what about, do you have any exit interview with the judges after the show?
It's difficult. I tried that one year, and it's difficult to have an exit interview with the judges. We did with a couple of them, but what I usually do is call those judges after the show if I have if there's some issues or those kind of things. So, I mean, again, they're human. That's a 10-day run. They've seen a lot of horses. It's really not fair to sit down with them after the show is right there, and as tired as they are, to talk to them about problems that they had in day 2. Okay, where that is, I try to address those as we go. I mean, on a daily basis. And sometimes I don't have to do it at all. That's a good day, but that's not usually what happens.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit, because you and I have had conversations in the past. There are judges' evaluation cards for all people, exhibitors and spectators also?
Yes.
So anybody can fill out a judge's evaluation card, correct?
That's correct.
And from what I understand, the only thing they have to do is they're really available at the show office. They go and they get a judge's evaluation card, fill it out, put $10 in, it's sent to you, and then at that point in time, you will go ahead and participate in actually evaluating that judge that was in question or questions.
Yeah. Walter, what happens there on a lot of that is that if you're going to do a formal complaint, yeah, it takes $10 and you need to fill that out. But you can do a judge's evaluation form. They have those there also, and send them in to me. That doesn't cost anything, and I'm still going to follow through with most of those. Try to answer them back for the most part. But what I do require of it is that it be signed by them, so I at least know who's talking to. I usually don't respond to something that's not signed. I don't, this is confidential, Stan. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't like that very well. I don't think that's fair to anybody. So, but if they want to do a complaint, yeah, that's $10, and I will start an investigation on that. And that may just very well mean going to the judge and talking to them, looking at their scorecards, seeing whether, depending on what it was.
Okay, so how does someone, because there's a lot of people say, okay, the next part of that is, if I send it in, how am I assured that this is going to be confidential between Stan and myself, and how do you assure someone that will happen?
Well, here's the thing. The only thing that's going to come to is me and my assistant in my office, and we are required, but through our bylaws, to react to those. Okay. In other words, then let's just think about that. Somebody sends something in on a judge, a bad evaluation, with an allegation that this happened in the ring, or they saw this, or whatever. I'm going to send that judge a letter. If there was videotape of it, I'll probably try to track that down, and I have done that before. Look at it. And I'll send a judge a letter asking him and requesting him to give his what took place, how it took place, when it took place, those kind of things. But never in any instance is the person's name mentioned, or the horse's name mentioned, or any of those kind of things. Or that stays with me. And conversely, the judge that I'm talking to it's confidential there too.
So in the past 12 months or 18 months, whatever, how many not judge. How many judges evaluations have you received, and how many complaints, the $10 complaints, have you received?
So far this year, I think I've had two, one. No, I take that back. Maybe three so far that sent $10 in. Now, judges' evaluation forms from each show, I probably had 50 of those. Of those 50, maybe because usually people are more proactive about sending in stuff that happens to them bad than they are good. I'll have 45 of those that are bad evaluations on a judge or a steward, and then the other 5 are probably this judge did an outstanding job, the steward was very nice to me, those kind of things. So, yeah.
So basically what you're saying, with all the horses that have been shown and all the shows that have happened,
yes,
and people with the complaining that they've done, there's only 3 of them that have had enough time or energy or $10 to send in. In my opinion, if the people are going to complain, then what they should do is actually go through the channels of making something happen.
That's
to me, that's something that obviously that exhibitor, breeder, participant, whatever, spectator can actually do, and it's a shame on them if they aren't, because they have the wherewithal to do it.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, and I agree with that, Walter. It's not. You and I have talked about this before. The easiest thing to do, and I don't respond to it, I don't try to get on there, but the easiest thing to do, from Snapchat to YouTube to Facebook to all of those kind of things, is to get on there and trash somebody, or trash a show, or trash a horse, in a negative connotation or something that happened, without being able to substantiate it. The real fact of the matter is, when you start substantiating stuff, most of the time, that's not what really happened. But I'm not going to get out there and do those kind of things. And you've argued with me about that. You need to tell these people, that this is what you've done, and go from there. But also, there is a level of confidentiality with this too.
Okay, I want to get back. I've got a couple more questions, and I think we'll wrap it up. But getting back to this perspective, and I'm going to go back to, because the performance is, it seems that a great deal of them, the majority of the performance at the Nationals is amateurs.
Yes.
So the level playing field is just amongst the amateurs themselves. Of course, there's things that could be involved with other things that might make it fair or not fair, whatever. But as a rule, the amateurs are amateurs against one another. And plus, there's a change, because performance, you can have a great ride one day and not so good the next. But I want to get back to halter, because the halter it's a breeding class. It's not a performance class. It's not something about training the horse. It's not something about how well it's this or that. It's the horse. We're specifically talking about the horse. The perspective still is that it's just not a level playing field, unless you got one of the big boys showing you, the horse for you. It's not worth your time, money, or your energy. Actually, from what you're saying, is that the scores that change the most are the legs and the neck. Well, these are areas that, any of those are breeding areas that don't change. So how can we address that? How can we address that area to show the people and to make them feel that the people that are judging them are not only educated on us, they all go through the judges seminars and stuff. How are we gonna assure them? How are the judges going to, or maybe a better question is not just you, but how are these judges going to assure them that they're getting a fair shake when they're being judged?
Well, two things, Walter, and let me. One, this year I'll initiate a halter certification for judges, so they'll be more involved, look at more video, and at a national level, what I'm hoping to have is, within the next 2 years, that if you don't have that halter certification in your background, that you probably won't be able to do a national show. That's one.
National show for halter.
For halter, right. And it's kind of like a reining horse association, those kind of things. But we are going to start looking at those kind of things. And then across the board, we're sending out more and more and more videos, and I'm going to try to do just like your deal is here. We'll start trying to do more involved things with people in the breeding industry to show legs, to look at a set of legs. You know, the easiest thing to set on is to say that horse has average legs. Define average, okay? Define above average. Define excellent. We all have an idea in our head, and that's what we grew up with. But I don't think a lot of people, you know, they look down and glance at 4 legs and go, well, they're okay. I don't see any problems with them. I don't, and that in itself doesn't work. You need to be able to put a number that says if this horse has an 18 set of legs, that's not a 15 next week. You know, that's the hard part, Walter. Now, the other side of that coin is this: like it or don't like it, amateurs, open, those kind of things. I have seen people come up and the horse has a great set of legs, and they park that horse there, and he's towed out or he's got a bad stance, and they just let it there. And so the judge, here we go again, the judge only judges what he sees. He's not supposed to look around there and go, well, you know, that horse has a great set of legs on him, but they really stood that horse in front of me wrong. Anybody that's a judge and has done this very long has seen that happen to them. You know, now then, I'll submit this to you, that when they track off, most of the time those weaknesses either correct themselves or make them worse. Okay? And that's where we need to educate judges a little bit more. The smartest thing I ever heard somebody say to me one time was, please don't judge a horse's conformation totally until you see him move. Okay? Until you see that horse move. And I think that's something that we have to adopt even more too.
Okay, so if that's being done and stuff, let's look at the judges' scorecards for a second. I've been doing this for 50 years. During those 50 years, we've had I don't know how many different kinds of scoring systems used.
Yes.
3 judges, 1 judge, 5 judge, comparative judges.
We've gone through that.
No matter what system that we use over those 50 years, we've continued to change because we don't like the system that's the one that's present.
Right.
Talk about the one that's present. We use the scorecard system now for the U.S. National. You have 1 to 20, okay?
That's 10 to 20. 10 to 20. Yeah.
Okay, 10 to 20. So a judge can't give 9s or 8s or 7s.
That's right.
All right, so it's 10 to 20. And basically, I haven't, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen a 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe a 14 at the U.S. Nationals.
No.
Okay? Or basically in the regionals. And in my mind, if they're using that scorecard accurately, there should be, because obviously you still have 0 to 1, but we aren't going to use that for whatever reason. I don't know, but maybe you can explain that to me. But how? I mean, basically, you're using 15 to 20, you know, and stuff. I mean, and everybody isn't a 15 to 20. I mean, how do you address that with people, or why do they only start out like at basically all legs are maybe a 14.5 if there's something really bad, but basically they're 15 to 16.5. That's legs. You know, you never see a 20 in legs. You don't see a 19 in legs. Very, very seldom. But you'll see a 20 in a head. So I mean, all our horses must have bad legs.
No, and those are all very good points and things that you and I have talked about before. But let me back up a little bit. Okay, the scorecard was changed, I think, 3 years ago from a 0 to 20 to 10 to 20 with half-point increments. 10 being the lowest that you could go. At a national show, have I seen a 10 given? I've been doing this now since 2009, and that was the lowest score that I've ever seen. Was a 3 at nationals. Okay. The next day, that horse was marked a 6. All right. Now then, the highest leg score that I have ever seen at U.S. Nationals was a 19. Okay. And you are correct. If you're going to go with, if you're going to say to yourself that there's a 20 head, there's a 20 neck, there's a 20 movement, or whatever they want to put, then somewhere out there, there's got to be 20 legs. But judges, me being one of them, have been trained and grilled into your head that there are never, ever perfect legs. There's always something wrong. So with that being said, it's just like you just started talking there. 14s, 15s, 16s, but those parts are starting to move up now. And again, we feel like, and just going by what we've looked at through data, is at the U.S. Nationals, most of the horses that step in the ring are 17s. Okay.
17s or above.
17s or above. Now then, there are, and I'll go this one with you. There have been 15s, there have been 14s, but most of the time they're in that range. So why then? And everybody just, well, Stan, why don't you just start them all at 15 and go up, and let's make this with half points. I don't subscribe to that, because I know out here in some of these smaller shows, you see people that lead horses in there, and they are down below the 15 mark. They are down in the 11 mark. I have seen some of those, but not very many. But the average Arabian horse that's coming to a horse show now, that these days, we're not talking about horses that are below average horses. Most of those horses are excellent to good as far as being, put together correctly, temperament trained correctly, all of those kind of things. As where when you and I grew up, there were 30 in the class, and we definitely saw some things that were below average. Okay, but people don't remember that. But we were also looking at only two, a halter. We had a gelding, a mare, and a stallion. We didn't have an amateur. We didn't have half Arabian. We didn't have all this other stuff. So the spread out is a lot bigger. I still agree with you, Walter, that it's really, really hard at nationals to sit there and I've gone along all year long, and I hear this every year. Stan, I've gone along all year long, and this horse has consistently scored 17 and above. I get here, and he is in the 16, 17 range, and that's it. Okay? And the rest of these horses are at 18. Well, my point with all that is it's the nationals, and there are horses out there. I just came from a horse show that I promise you there were 20s there, and they're excellent to above average horses that have been world champion all over the world. But I also looked at their legs, and I had a chance to do that because I was in the paddock all the time. There were some bad-legged horses there. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the whole deal is bad, but that one component is hard to deal with. It's hard to deal with.
Okay, let's talk about there's still this controversy for halter with that we should be going back to the comparative system versus the point system.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And part of the complaint that they have is that the point system is so boring and takes so long. It doesn't add any excitement to the show. In fact, it takes away from the show. What's your feeling on that, and what's the possibility that would go back to a comparative system?
We've looked at it 15 different ways. Number one, we've proven unless something is really amiss, either scoring or everything else, that it takes no longer to score a horse than it did before. That's one. Two, the very essence of the scorecard has changed our breed Some people say for the worst, others say for the better. That remains to be seen. But the essence of it is that a great horse's extreme, in other words, head, movement, tail carriage, something like that, that one component didn't just win that whole class. Okay, it took a whole horse. I had a lot of time to talk to halter guys about the scorecard. And to the most part, even the ones that were his biggest detractors, said at least that they could take it and use it as a marker for other things. Now then, you know how those horses were scored in New York? They were scored comparatively. You know, the reason that they were scored comparatively is because they asked us that most of those horses were world champions. Okay, the same as when we have at our U.S. Nationals, they are scored to get to the finals. When they get to the finals, then they are scored comparatively. Okay, because they're against each other, and I still like that the best. But you have to have a marker to get you there. You have to have something to get you there besides one judge seeing that. I don't care what you do because this horse has got the prettiest head in this class. He's the winner. I don't care what he looks like from the rest of it. And that's the whole fallacy with it. Okay. Now then, I think that to its detriment, the scorecard has caused components of our Arabian horse, if you will, not to be used, not to be utilized. Sheila Varian's horses, Lasma horses, Walter, I mean, we can go down the line all the way around with this. And what you look at is at some point, sometimes neck and shoulder, sometimes movement, sometimes those other things, they go to these other ways to get there. And that means by type is such a huge thing. The part of the horse that's the prettiest, as you will say, and you and I argue about this all the time. I want the best horse that is athletic and utilitarian in a lot of different ways, not just because he's got the prettiest head. And I think the scorecard does help us with that.
Okay, so at U.S. Nationals this year, they're going to have a little bit, they've broken it down a little bit differently for the divisions and the championships.
Yes.
So let's use the yearlings for example. The yearlings then will have to be judged twice.
Yes.
So there'll be a qualifying class for them, so that those with the most points will come in, and then they'll come back, and then they'll be judged comparatively, so that everybody understands that. Correct?
That's correct.
So explain a little bit more detail so everybody understands.
You know what it is, Walter, is more like a junior championship. Okay, we're looking at the junior horses. I think and I'll have to look at the categories, and we'll have to look at that as far as the yearlings and 2-year-olds. But because of the sweepstakes that's involved there, yeah, they're going to be judged, and then they'll come back in, and then they'll be judged comparatively. But the highest moving, let's just say there's 2 sections of yearlings, A and B. The highest point horses, a lot of people don't understand that either. There may be 10 in one class and 6 in the other. The highest pointed horses out of those 2 sections will move forward. Okay?
Okay.
Not just A and B. That's the fairest thing you can do.
Okay. Now, one of my last questions is, for the halter horses, there's been a steady decline in the number of halter horses that have been shown, okay?
Right.
For whatever reason. Well, let's not address the reasons for a minute. Let's address a solution.
I agree.
What would be your solution to get more halter horses to be shown in the ring today?
Well, we've looked at a lot of different things here, Walter, and I'll say something that's a little controversial here. You could say they need to be American bred. Okay. A lot of people they just go through the roof when you say that. But let me give you a dynamic that a lot of people haven't thought about, is that there are people all over this world that may produce 90 foals this year. Okay, I know of one farm in this country that is owned by somebody else in the Middle East that's going to produce 90 foals. Do we have the wherewithal within the American public that is anybody producing 90 foals? So his to draw from for the horses that he's going to show, as opposed to our 3 or 4, he's got a huge advantage to us. So it keeps driving. Why should we compete? Why do we need to compete? Right? So is that a solution? No, I don't like that, because I just like people to be able to, if they want to do that, that's what this country's about, is to be able to bring their horses in and do whatever they want to. But we're the only country that allows that. 2, I think that the incentives are that you have to have a extreme, and I don't like using this word, but you've got to have a freak to be able to compete. And I want to disagree with that. I'll go back to my statement that I said in the first part of this thing is that sometimes judges don't like anything that they see in the ring, but you have to pick something. But by and large, most of the time when judges are presented the opportunity, whether it be in Western, halter, English, or whatever, and that horse comes through the ring that they really like, and I've seen it happen time and again, that horse goes to the top really fast. Okay? And he doesn't have to be the freak. He doesn't have to be the one that's the most exhilarant or all this kind of stuff. But he does have to be a utilitarian horse. And I think that denotes us trying to find people in this country to breed more horses. And let's just be real about it. I mean, you have to be able to create a market where they can sell those horses. When those babies, when most of us have said this, I used to show halter horses. That's where I made my living for the longest time, was to take in halter horses. But when you're really looking in your mind's eye, okay, where can this horse compete? I know in this region alone, and I'm in Region 9 in Europe there, where there is a ton of halter horses, a lot of different halter horses. They don't show up because they don't feel like they can compete because of the extremes, because of the selection that they have. So the answer to it is that I think you have to be able to produce a lot of horses that have a good job and a market to go forward with that. Again, we're looking at a lot of different ways through AHA is to try to get that breeding part up, but that's a tough thing, and we're not by ourselves here. I don't want to sound like the doomsday person, but the Morgans, the saddle horses, the quarter horses, go look at their breed registry statistics. It's not an easy thing.
Well, as far as like from knowing, like in Brazil, there are a lot of breeders there that do breed 50 or more foals a year.
Yeah.
And when I've gone to the Brazilian National since 1985, I've seen that a lot of the horses, and I would be willing to bet that at least 50% of those horses that win come from and are bred by the smaller breeders and stuff. And so because somebody breeds a lot of horses, of course that gives them an advantage, but that doesn't mean that they're going to
no.
You know.
And I know you're going to disagree with you about that.
And additionally, by having the horses from around the world, and if we're going to make the U.S. Nationals the most prestigious show in the world, it should be, if you got the best, bring them on, because this is the best show. We've had imported horses here since, basically almost from the time that the Nationals started, and stuff. I mean, we know about Basque and others that started a revolution of bringing in horses and Muscat from every different country, of whether Russia or Poland or whatever, England, Spanish. And to me, in what they do in Brazil, they have a breeders' show that's just for the breeders, and that's not their national show, but it's their breeders' show. And that's nothing wrong with that. It's a wonderful idea, and it works extremely well in Brazil. It could work here as well. and stuff for it. The horse has to be bred by that person and owned by that person in order to show in that particular show. But getting to the U.S. Nationals this year, you've seen, and I would assume now that the entries are basically closed, so what is the outlook for both halter and performance? Are we up in numbers or down in numbers, or where are we at?
Well, we're not down in numbers. To say that we're up, no, not quite. I don't. Well, I think, and I'll always say this: we're running about flat, and flat meaning that we didn't lose or gain that much. I think quite frankly, I think we're up a little bit because of the futurities and the incentive programs with the purebreds, but the half Arabians may be off just a little bit as far as the halter is concerned.
Now, my last part that I'd like to address is the part where how the horses are going to be showing or where they're showing at the U.S. Nationals. You know, there's been a group of people that feel that the purebred should have their own show and the half-air should be their own show. There's been a group that have said that there should be a halter show and there should be a performance show. There's those groups. And the thing that I've always heard is through AHA, no, we want to keep it so that it's one show for the Arabian breed and stuff.
Yes.
Now, that said, let's assume that that's the correct way of doing it. But the problem that I see happening this year at the Nationals, we have not embraced that. We've gone just the opposite. By having the halter horses strictly for 3 days in the one ring and all the performance in the other rings, if you're there to see performance and you want to see some halter, you virtually can't do it, or vice versa. If you want to see halter and you want to, in example, a good friend of mine, Larry Jerome, that breeds a lot of halter horses, a lot of Western horses, it's almost going to be impossible for him to see his Western horses because halter is on for 3 days solid in a different arena. So what we've done, in my estimation, we've segregated this whole breed into either performance or your halter. Where before, I know a lot of the performance trainers and breeders would come up to watch the halter and vice versa. We've eliminated that for this year at the Nationals. What's your opinion on that? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, I don't think that you're wrong, Walter, but I also think there's a dynamic there also. Two things happen. Okay, we sent out surveys, and we also created the in-hand task force. Okay, and both of those, the survey said, if you will, and the task force said, no, we want to have this in the pavilion, provided that you fix that pavilion up that is representative of, let's say, Las Vegas or some of these other places. Every time, and I'm just telling you straight here, every time that we tried to do it down in the Ford Arena, because of the class either coming in or going out that was behind it, whether it be Western Pleasure or those kind of things, it got so disruptive because with the halter horses, you're able to bag your horses, you're able to do a lot of different things and send them up in the air, and the yelling and the excitement that goes on with that. The class that was coming in after that was extremely disruptive. Now then, if it was an English class, some of that got handled. But if it was a lady side saddle, wasn't pretty. Okay, it just wasn't pretty. And so they all, and a lot of the major players in this thing wanted to be at the pavilion. Provided that they're fixing up the pavilion. Do I think it's a separatist move in trying to get it more isolated? I don't want to say that, Walter, because I think it was dictated by somebody else. Do I agree with it? All I'm saying is that they felt like that they could have a better venue at the pavilion, okay, for the halter. And it's the same thing as the working Western people have said, no, we want our own deal over in the Mustang. Okay, the trail this year will be done in your halter pavilion early on, and then the halter will be changed after that. So that's what they wanted to do, and that's all they're going to hold is trail down there. That's all they're going to hold in the national. So it's the same situation. Do I agree with it? You know, I grew up just like you did. We lived for the nights where you could come in there and watch the halter horses come in at night, and then there was an English pleasure class or Western pleasure class, and so it was all together. And I still like that, but a lot of people seem to that's not what they said to us.
So I mean, but I hear this quite a bit. You know, no matter who does the surveys, you know, I mean, who got the surveys? Who determined? I mean, who got the surveys? Because I don't remember getting any survey of anything regarding halter or anything else, and a lot of the people that I've talked to, you know, I mean, that do a lot of halter showing never got any of the surveys. So I mean,
and I heard
it's only as good as is the survey that presents itself to a fair basis.
Yeah,
I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying what did they use for the survey? Do you know?
All I can tell you is I asked that same question at a board meeting, and I said, okay, well, who are these surveys going to? And they said, for the most part, they are people that have exhibited halter horses in some either way at the U.S. Nationals in the last 3 to 4 years. That's what was said to me. Now then, whether that all took place and everybody got one, I don't know that, Walter. All I'm telling you is that was what they got back.
And the other thing that I've heard, and we're going to address this a little bit of the halter part as well. You know, in order to, when you're watching halter, you're going to be watching in the pavilion, where if you're watching performance, you're watching the main arena is Ford.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in Ford and you're a patron and you want to watch performance, you have the tables there, and you know, you have the food there, and you have all the amenities that are all there in Ford. Now, when you get to U.S. Nationals, not only, from what I understand, and correct me where I'm wrong, but you not only have to be a patron in order to get one of the tables in the pavilion, where if you're in the Ford and you're showing performance, you don't need to buy an additional table. You're just a patron and you're afforded the right to a table and the food right there, where at the halter, they have to not only pay for a patron package, but they also have to pay for a table in order to have a table to sit at.
You know what, Walter? That may be correct. I'm not sure about that. That's something that I'm not sure. I can't answer that. But you know, I'm thinking of the tables that they're putting around where the stand-up tables, not the ones that are just right in the position. I thought those were for the patrons that were right inside there. But what you're saying is those tables are sold also.
Right. You have to buy a patron package, and then
you have to pay for that table.
And then you have to pay for the table. In fact, in my opinion and stuff, I mean, it kind of puts a negative to the halter people, because I mean, there should be, whether it doesn't make any difference what pavilion in or what division you're seeing, it should be the same.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you about that. But I'm not sure about all that. So that I would be to tell you I understand that. That'd be a miss.
My last question to you, and thank you, by the way, for participating with me tonight at our inaugural one for ArabianHorses.com. But what do you see from your standpoint is the future for the Arabian horse breed?
Well, I see a lot of positive things that we're trying to do, and AHA is trying to do. A lot of different people are trying to do it. It's not just us. I mean, you know, I don't think that I discount Scottsdale and the way that they do things out there. I mean, that's a perfect storm show, but they handle it extremely well. It's well done. You know, quite frankly, a lot of people don't understand this, and I've shown different breeds and been around a lot of different breeds. I mean, that show is esteemed all over the country. You mention it to anybody, it's even in different breeds, and so there's huge pluses to that. Specifically, my worry is that the Arabian horse keeps moving forward And we need a, whether it's AHA, whether it's you doing the things that you're doing on this, all of us judges, we need a little bit of a shot in the arm that is a positive instead of all the things that come out on Facebook that are negative. I watched a deal the other day on something with Arabian horses that was a therapy thing that was done, and how much it had helped these people, children, men, women, from an emotional standpoint, and it was specifically targeted with Arabian horses. And now those all feel good, warm and fuzzy. Yeah, they are, but we need some of that. We need people to believe that this horse is not high-strung, not the expensive, only the sheikh and the ultra-wealthy own this thing, but this horse is a utilitarian, very, very much a people horse. And whether it be through your things or promotional, that's the things that I look for, the positives about this. And I think it can flourish. Again, you know as well as I do, Walter, am I looking for the 80s to come back here? No, I'm not. But I do feel like a huge responsibility to protect this horse. I think he has a ton to offer to people all over this country. He's just got to get exposed correctly.
Well, Stan, thank you for your time, and this is a pleasure being with you. And if anybody out there is watching, I encourage you to share this video. It will be online at ArabianHorse.com. At any time you can view it. Again, Arabian Horse or ArabianHorses.com, and you can go and click in there and view this anytime, anywhere, any place. Stan, thank you for this wonderful day of your time, and let's hope that the U.S. Nationals is the best ever.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.